feel like we've always had ghosts in our family. My grandmother totally believed in them. My mom had one when she was a childhood that I was told about as a kid growing up. Never been afraid of them, always welcomed them. I just feel that, people think of the word ghost as a scary, terrible thing, and really it can be a really good thing if you have them.
A lot of times people, when they talk about afterlife and spirits and ghosts and whatnot, they just say that a lot of times examples of like the money, those things are coincidence, or examples of well, you felt a rubbing on your shoulder, but your shirt just was loose or something like that.
Yeah, this was like a good 4 minutes of rubbing. It wasn't like boop your shirt.
Yeah.
This was like the comforting back rub that I had as a kid when you're in bed and you're something about school and high school, how high school is, and she would just say, it's okay, and that was, and your mother's hand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that it wasn't that, and and it was actually fingers. It wasn't like
Yeah. So separating coincidence from actual knowing that it's going on, what made you? Do you just knowing that it was your mother, like you were around her when you were a child, and you just
I knew without a doubt, and sometimes and when there's when it's not real and it is real. See, that's another thing too. So I could be driving down the road and I could have that I could be like, oh, I have this going on today, Mom, if hopefully this works out. That's not a real one. The real ones are actually either physical, touching, seeing, or there's a big sign. It's not just that, oh, she's here driving, with you in the car. That's just like one that you just kind of, Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's
real ones.
There's a separation between I have no involvement in hey, I want this to happen, then it happens.
Right,
so
right.
well. But and then when you have no idea what's going on around you, and then suddenly it's there, and it's so real. It's like an unsolvable puzzle, and then there's boom, the answer right there.
Boom. Yeah.
So these instances where the spirit of your mother that goes to your mother appears is in a lot of high stress or important times. Right. Do you obviously believe that there's a reason for that?
Yeah, I think that my mom died way too soon, and I think that she knew, she lived for, she was in a coma for months, and I think that, she was in a car accident. It wasn't her fault. She was run off the road into a telephone pole, but I feel that she feels an obligation to take care of me, especially because I'm the doer. I don't want to sound like that, but I help everybody in our family. I took care of my grandmother, take care of my my brother. My brother's not doing well right now, so I feel that she is there to give me the strength that I need so that I can take care of the people that I need to take care of.
You talked about your mother dying way too soon.
Right.
You said that. Do you feel like now her helping you in these times is a way of giving back to say, I'm sorry I can't be there?
Yes, that's what I totally, definitely feel that. And people, people say, oh, someone passes, and she's been physically there. I mean, that rubbing on my back when I was a kid, that was her big soothing thing. Like when we were going to sleep at night or something, she'd be like, it's okay, it's okay, Jane, and she would rub my back like that. So it was identical to that. That rubbing for whether or not we should buy trimmers, it was identical to my childhood. So I knew that it was her, that whole feeling. And like I said, my brother really doesn't have that inkling with her, that feeling. I've told him about it. I don't really tell a lot of people or talk about it because it's kind of like a private thing, and
it's a sacred thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and and people are gonna be like, yeah, right, But I mean, I'm driving down the road and I know she's there, and I get it from light. I mean, in the middle of the night when it's pitch black, and I wake up like this, and my room is in complete brightness. What is that? You know what I mean? And then it's not long. It's like boop, and I wake up. I'm like, oh, and then I get that peaceful feeling, and then boop, right back to sleep. That has happened a couple of times. One of the biggest things with when I was a kid, my grandmother always telling me the stories about their ghost, which they feel was a woman, and they actually saw that one, but not the whole body physically, but they would turn and then boop, going around the corner would be a long skirt. And she explained to me what the skirt looked like, what the material was. My grandmother was, she worked in New York City as a seamstress, probably her whole life. So she knew exactly what the fabric was and all that kind of stuff. So that was, and details, you know, she always had details. And so I always felt that connection with my grandmother. And like I said before about her, when she passed, you know, with me and my brother being kids, it was always, Alan, 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 you know, he's this, he's that. But I took care of my grandmother, did her laundry. I mean, I was there 4 times a week, and we used to argue, you know, we had arguments. And I remember going to her house, and we had this argument, and I was like, Nan, you know, that's what I called her. I'm like, you know, I do everything for you, I don't understand, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I left in a huff, and it wasn't a good ending to that day with her. And that night I was going to sleep, it was like 11 o'clock at night, my phone rang, I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's her. You know, do I get it, do I not get it? I picked up the phone, and it was her, and she said, Jane, she goes, it's Nan. I'm like, hi, what's going on, are you all right? She goes, no, I'm fine, everything's great. I just really need to apologize for today. And, you know, I'd never have said this to you before, but you do everything for me. If it wasn't for you, I couldn't live on my own. I'm 92 years old. I live at home because you have always, because I supported that. They wanted to put her in nursing homes and this and that. And I said, I'll take care of her, you know, let her stay home. That was her biggest thing, to stay home. And I wouldn't be able to do this without you. I know that you do everything for me and no one else does, and blah, blah, blah. And I went to sleep that night feeling so at peace with our relationship, which was great because it was a little rocky at times. And the next morning I called her and she didn't answer the phone, and I called the police because they had keys to get in, and they went in and she had passed. And they figured that phone call was probably 11 o'clock. We probably spoke at least a half an hour. There's a lot of tears involved. You know, she was crying, I was crying, and you know, it was really a great conversation. The best conversation I had with her in my whole entire life was that night conversation. And the police said she probably died around 1 o'clock in the morning. She died peacefully in her sleep. So that was unbelievable. And it was a great ending for her and me, you know. So there was no hard feelings, there was no guilt, there was no, it was awesome. You know, and I never really felt, I did feel, of course I felt sad about her death, but not to that extent, because I know we had that whole connection at the end.
Yeah, I think there's a certain, like, aspect of that when you hang up the phone, and like we talked about this earlier.
Right.
She didn't know that she was going to die.
She didn't know. I mean, like I told you, Jake, it wasn't like she was on her deathbed dying of cancer and on her deathbed in the hospital where she felt she needed to make amends, which sometimes you don't even know if those amends are even heartfelt and real. Sometimes people just do them just because, you know, out of guilt. But this was like a true heartfelt, really, and my grandmother was never like an open, warm and fuzzy type person like that. So that's what I was taken back. I'm holding the phone out like, is this really her, you know? But yeah, we had this great conversation, and I feel that that was probably the beginning of all these things that have happened from that day on. You know, it was early in my life when, you know, and yeah, so it builds up. I mean, I don't have that experience like every day. And sometimes it goes a month or 2 months without any experience. But then when it does happen, I know, you know, I know what it is.
It's just that no doubt feeling.
No doubt feeling that's my mom. And I can't say that I've ever had my grandmother come to me ever since that conversation, but my mother and my grandmother were so identical and alike, so it's kind of like a weird thing. Like I feel like it's both in a way, even though I know it's my mom, but. Yeah.
Any other times
I think that the latest thing was that little money situation, which was kind of nice. I mean, that's never happened before, anything like that. But you know, it's just knowing. I mean, I can go days with knowing that she's not there, but then I can go like 2 days in a row knowing that she's right there. The answer, exactly. And it's always, and then you know what I've learned to do in life too because of it is. I have that thing that if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and I totally believe in that. You know, where people are like, they push to have this end result happen in their life. I'm not like that anymore. I'm like, you know what? If that's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and I think part of it is because of that.
You said you're not like that anymore, did you? Was there a time in your life where you thought
Oh,
that?
I had to make things happen. I was like a major control freak. My whole life was scheduled, planned, written down, and what I'm going to do, and what college, and when, and and what I'm going to do. And then now I take one day at a time, which is such a better, nicer feeling to be able to do, because I ultimately know that I'm going to be taken care of.
Do you think that your change in your approach to life, your laid-back approach now, your day-to-day approach, is a direct result or part of a result from the interactions you've had, maybe involving your mother, your grandmother?
Totally, and I think the reason being is because my mother was, they own their own businesses. My mother and my dad, they were never at home when we were kids a lot, and I know that she regretted that, and I think that. And that's because she had her whole life planned out. She went to Columbia University. She majored in this. She had, everything was planned out with my mom. And I think that's her way of not wanting me to do that. And you know what? It's so much more enjoyable and so much more fun. And you it's kind of made me want to help other people. Do you know what I mean? Whether I can, I do whatever I can with, to help other people, I think, because of that. Yeah, so that's good. That's about it. But that's my encounter, and we'll see when she comes next, and the reason for why she's coming next, But I don't feel anything coming up in the immediate. I kind of you kind of get that woo, feeling. So anyway, nothing coming up soon.
You mentioned earlier when we talked that a lot of times people see ghosts and they're like, and before this was on camera, you were talking to me about how you feel like people should not run from them, but accept them. And
embrace them, because, I feel that they're, people, they hear the word ghost, like I said, and oh my gosh, it's a terrible, scary thing. It's not a terrible, scary thing. And, I think that's just like the impression that we have of what a ghost is, and it's not. I mean, because I think that you can get help from it. I think they lead you nicely. To do things, it's comforting, and I think it's definitely not a scary thing. It's definitely I think it's a positive thing if people would allow that to, allow them in their lives, really. I know it comforted my mother and my grandmother when they were kids, because my grandmother was a single mom. So that other person in the house, I think, was comforting to her. And it wasn't scary. And I grew up as a kid never being afraid of ghosts. We're kids at night, oh my gosh, the ghost is going to come in the middle of the night. I'm like, bring it on.
And now, an interview with the mastermind behind the blog Skeptophilia, acclaimed author and teacher at Charles O. Dickerson High School, Mr. Gordon Bonnet.
Have you ever had a paranormal experience?
I have not. I would love to.